Secretariat has summarized our previous discussion and has found that there is some sort of a consensus. After she has consolidated the points raised in discussion, that will be submitted to members. Next item on the agenda. Size of the Select Committee and procedure for nomination of members for appointment to the Select Committee. Just to recap, I'm sure members, having read the paper, know what we're supposed to talk about. First, membership size. Earlier on, we had some exchanges on the size. May I propose to set the size to 13? Any views? Mr. Kwok-him. Chairman, if members agree to set size at 13, I'm fine with it. And the size of membership is not something of a big deal. If we have more than 13 people applying to join, what are we to do? If that happens, we will, at the House Committee meeting, hold an election. Whether it's by way of a show of hands or by way of electronic means, that's subject to further discussion. So that's how we are going to deal with over-application. And if we have 13 applications, we won't have this problem then. We don't have to go for voting. Ms. Ho, just to supplement. Of course, we want to see more pro-democratic Comm members on the Select Committee, but we respect members' decision. People from different political parties and different groups want to join the Select Committee. Shall we get representatives from all these groups to sit on the Select Committee? If we have more applications than we want, let's go for representation of each group. We'll come back to the amendments of TLR later. If members agree, we'll set the size to 13. Next, procedure for the nomination of members for the appointment to the Select Committee. If there's no further question, I don't think we have to spend much time on it. Earlier on, something happened, so we have to review the electronic voting. If at the meeting after the next meeting at the House Committee, at that meeting there will be nomination of members to Select Committee. If it's over 13, we'll have to go by way of election. Members have to be nominated and seconded and subject to acceptance by the nominee. Subject to prior consent, the absentee can also be nominated. Should nomination exceeds 13, members can only put forward 13 nominations instead of 14 or above. After the forming of the Select Committee, there will be a 15-minute break. For the 13 appointed members to select the chairman, and if necessary, the deputy chairman too.
Then we'll have the chairman and deputy chairman for the affirmation by the House Committee. That's for election. Then the House Committee chairman will submit our proposal to the President, and the President will make an appointment at the Council meeting. Any comments? Dr. Priscilla Leung. I was just outside. Do you mean that all procedures of the Select Committee should be observed, save for those specific to those with PNP? Because for the Comm Select Committee, we spent 2 weeks on the issue. So this Select Committee will be like those in the past, save for PNP. Mrs. Ma, I think we should wait for the Select Committee to be established with a chairman and deputy chairman. Then we'll arrange a meeting for the Select Committee to discuss its own procedures. And we'll also prepare a list of those procedures adopted by past Select Committees to see whether members accept the past practices. Of course, for this particular Select Committee, there's no PNP, so some procedures may not be applicable. Clark, in the paper, we mentioned something. May I refer you to paragraph 5 of the paper, which sets out the appointment of members to a Select Committee. That's in paragraph 5, which sets out the procedures. In paragraph 6, we ask members to consider whether or not any changes would be necessary. At the beginning of this term, we have 3 particular committees for nomination procedures. That is on the 19th of October. That set of procedures was used. For past Select Committees, they had slightly different nomination procedures. So this subcommittee can make a decision on whether or not to adopt the changes. Now, thank you. Well, it should be 15 minutes instead. It should be 10 minutes instead of 15 minutes. Just now I mentioned 15 minutes. Now, the clerk reminded us that in paragraph 6, electronic voting had been adopted. So members, do you support electronic voting, or would you like to stick to a show of hands? I think this is already the electronic era, the scientific era. So I think it's a bit difficult to go back to the old system, that is by show of hands, which was problematic. At present, our facilities can support electronic voting. Last time, Mr. Leung Kwok-him offered a lot of comments. Perhaps I should draw members' attention to paragraph 6C. There it is mentioned that if an election is necessary, then members should vote in accordance with the sequence. On the 19th of October, the arrangement agreed to is that if a member has voted for a number of nominees which exceeds the number required for appointment, the vote cast in excess of the required number will not be counted. At that particular House Committee meeting, members raised the concern that it would be difficult to ascertain the so-called excessiveness. So all votes cast by that particular member should be disregarded. So I think the subcommittee has to make a decision on this as well. Mr. Kwok-him, I agree that all votes cast should become invalid in such a situation because nobody knows whom that member wants to vote for. Only that member knows. So all votes cast by him should not be counted. I'd like to clarify something. If you render all votes cast invalid, I'm not sure that will impact on the votes of other members. Then members may have to vote again. In the past, we did it by a show of hands. If the member had raised his hand 13 times, he would not be able to raise his hand for a 14th time. Mr. Kwok-him was saying that if such a member raises his hand for a 14th time, all his past 13 choices would become invalid. However, the members are returned once a voting is terminated. Mr. Porter, Mr. Chairman, I don't think you need to worry about that because we have to wait till all the votes are completed before we know who would be elected. So I think I can support Mr. Kwok-him. If you tick more than the number of ticks to be written, then the whole ballot paper should be rendered invalid. So the electronic voting system can adopt such an approach and system. It seems that at the moment, the electronic voting system will return the elected members one by one. So it's the same as in the past when each member or each nominee was voted upon. So for our electronic voting system, will it set a limit to the number of times a certain member can press his button? That is, no member can press more than 13 times the button. Clerk? At the beginning of the session, we tested the electronic voting system a number of times. The electronic voting system can print out a report after the vote to indicate how many times a certain member has cast his vote. So, if a member has voted for a number of nominees exceeding the number required for appointment, that can be shown. Immediately shown, well, within a few moments at the same meeting. Why should there be such a controversy? Because it's a matter of fairness. Those nominated later may be subject to unfairness. So the electronic voting system should be fairer in this sense. That is, even members nominated at a later stage will still be treated fairly. Well, Mr. Chairman, it doesn't matter. Even at the council meeting, we use the electronic voting system. If the electronic voting system can handle the council meetings, then there's no reason why the system cannot handle voting here in this subcommittee. Don't play any more tactics, all right? If you vote for 14 nominees, all your votes will become invalid. Then we may need to change the approach, because in the past, once a nominee obtained a majority support, he would be elected. And now, the electronic voting system will list out all the votes. So that's a fair approach. Is that possible? Technically possible. All right. So we gave up the past practice of returning a nominee by way of a simple majority. So now we have to wait till all the results are out. The 13 members who obtain the highest number of votes will be elected.
如果咁樣咧，我哋就翻到去職權範圍嗰度。大家而家台面裏邊咧都睇咗一份啦。咁呢一份咧係睇大家咩意見。嗱，我讀一講緊嘢。
Any more comments? Well, we're going to adopt the word delta inquiry. So why is it that in the new version we still have 研究? And then in the Chinese version, in the second last line, the word source should be deleted, right? In the petition is the Finance Committee of the LegCo. I did read the petition. So if you delete 財務委員會 Finance Committee, there may be a problem. Well, mislead the LegCo is what I wrote in the petition. So should we confine ourselves to the Finance Committee? Because the ICAC on various occasions would submit information to the LegCo. And that should be considered as well. So there's no reason why we should confine ourselves to the Finance Committee. That's my opinion. Legal advisor? Well, I believe members have to refer to the petition to see whether the exclusion of the Finance Committee complies with the content of the petition. Of course, Mr. Dennis Kwok mentioned his thoughts back then, but eventually it's for members to make their own judgment. I apologize that the legal advisor cannot really offer any advice to members. Should we not conclude our meeting at 10:45? Oh, yes, I'm trying to do that. Well, I don't think we should exceed the content of the petition. But I believe that in the process, there should be a certain degree of flexibility. Anyway, the TOR should mainly be based on the content of the petition. Mr. Kwok, Mr. Chairman, the petition is very clear on this expression. The petition specifically refers to inaccurate and untrue information submitted to the Finance Committee of the LegCo by the ICAC. And then for above matters, the ICAC did submit the information to the Finance Committee. So the inquiry will not be confined to a narrower scope. Of course, the petitioners will think that they would like the inquiry to face the whole EDGCO. But I don't think the expression used here will not confine the Select Committee to the Finance Committee. All right, so maybe the terms of reference will be for this Select Committee to inquire into the handling of duty visits, official entertainment and gifts by the former Commissioner of the Independent Commission Against Corruption, Mr. Timothy Tong, while he was serving in that post. Whether or not such handling matches his status as a public officer and the values of the ICAC in promoting cleanliness and integrity, and how the ICAC had, in relation to the above matters, submitted information to the Finance Committee of the LegCo. I think it's rather clumsy. I think you should fine-tune the Chinese version. Can any of the tick in the Chinese version be deleted? All right. So we'll submit this version to the House Committee. So this item is concluded. Last item on the agenda, any other business? A minor point.
AOB. Our discussions here are for reference purposes only, for future meetings. So what we discuss is just for reference, right? I don't quite get you, Dr. Leung. Now our discussion is for reference only, but for the other all right, that will be for future discussion. Thank you.